Please, Lena, tell us a little bit about you and then your analysis and strategy. Very interesting title for it. Games and like culture this year.
It's huge. Yes. This is very yes.
So, yes, thank you. My name is Lena Falkenhagen.
Director. Marcello, possiamo spegnere la luce? Dove si può spegnere la luce?
La prima linea. House.
We have to, some people asked it to turn off the lights. To see better present. Yes.
This is a space extra.
And we don't know where is the light.
Che cavolo, non ci vedo da
Welcome.
So di essere io l'ipovedente, però
We are against impovedenti.
e niente.
And
E niente.
this is our policy.
Anzi, sì che faccio una cosa diversa.
And we got you. Respect.
Okay, I apologize, Lena. You can proceed.
Okay, we'll try to switch off the lights. So first, thank you for inviting me. I feel very honored to be here and to be able to talk to you about German memory culture, interactive memory culture, which I deem is very important. I have to, thank you so much. I have to apologize for three things in advance. First, unfortunately, tragically, I don't speak Italian. I'm sorry.
Sorry for our not very, as I can say. Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you very much for this dynamic approach that you had in this edition. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Secondly, I'm a bit sick, so I hope my voice holds up. And thirdly, I apologize for not talking about AI like everybody else does. And if I do venture into the lands of AI, please stop me because I'm going to rant about it, okay? So, I mean AI. But anyway, I'm Lena Falkenhagen. I'm a professor for game design, game art and design at the University for Applied Art at Essen in Germany. I also am a narrative director for serious games, and I also teach serious games. That is kind of my profession. I also write books, but I always say that my books are more entertainment than my games, which I find kind of funny. So, yes. Do we want to introduce, or do we like go later?
Nico, would you like to say something again about you? The people they know.
Yeah, I'm Nico, for those that haven't seen me since yesterday, and for those that don't know, I'm in charge of the speaker and conference program at Gamescom Dev, Gamescom's official developer conference in Cologne. And right now I'm just here to bathe in Lena's fame, and that's all.
Thank you very much.
He's lying, of course. Like Nico is way more famous and knows more people than I do, So this is what I'm going to talk about today. I will offer you a presentation for about 20 minutes. So about the past, the history of playing games that take place in the Nazi era, in the Third Reich. I will introduce you to 4 games that deal with Nazis and the Holocaust, German games, and what journey they took to be able to talk about that. I'll also talk a bit about games as cultural artifacts, of course, and games and democracy, but technically this talk is about memory culture and serious games. So, you can unmute here, or yes. We've actually long been playing the Nazi era. I'm going to talk about how we got here. I just think that we played games about the Nazi era in a very unreflective way. Because this is, if you look at I have to change, the right side, this is an actual Nazi picture, and the left side is from a game. So I stole these slides from Jörg Friedrich, who's the creative director of Pink Wicked Games. I will mention him a couple of times today. And this is Comedy of Heroes. So they took the Nazi aesthetics to basically reflect on their games. And this also happened in Company of Heroes 2, where we basically have a whole enlargement of soldiers, the enlargement of men, the height of, I don't know, the superhuman basically. And therefore, Battlefield 5, the DLC for Battlefield 5, they also invented an upright German anti-Nazi elite soldier unit that never existed to basically make Nazis nice guys, or make German soldiers in that time nice people. That which I also think is critique worthy. And again, here's another game and another slide from. This is this cover from Company of Heroes 2. The right side is again an original picture of the time, which is basically saying the same two recreated the Nazi aesthetics in their games. And this is how we played Nazi games, or games about Germany in the Second World War. And I think, and paper games, by the way, also felt like this is the wrong way to approach this topic. So, I will quickly venture, and now it's very dark, I apologize. I will quickly go into the fields of philosophy and literature, because Theodor Adorno, who's a famous German philosopher who invented the Frankfurt School of Criticism in Germany, said writing a poem after Auschwitz is barbaric. And what he meant with that has been highly disputed, because this has long been used to discourage any poetry or any literature about the Holocaust. So this meaning that basically you cannot write about Auschwitz, you cannot make art about Auschwitz. And games about the Holocaust were seen as an impossibility, an atrocity in Germany, because games obviously were not art, and so they would do Auschwitz the wrong way, right? So this was the German stance on serious games about the Holocaust. In Germany, it is important to know that anti-constitutional symbols like the swastika, for example, or any SS insignia are forbidden under German law. So you cannot use them, you cannot spray them on a wall, you cannot put them on a fire, you cannot use German gestures, or like the German, what was it called? Yeah, the Nazi rhetoric in general. It is forbidden. It is supposed to be hate speech and hate talk, basically. And if you do, you're basically being prosecuted for that. You can get to jail. But, of course, we have, in the German law, we have the social adequacy clause, the paragraph that says, yes, it is forbidden to use the symbolism, but for art, it is allowed. So film, movies, literature, like the likes of that, happenings can use swastika, and of course science can use swastika for their articles and for their art. But until 2018, this clause did not include games. So we have an institution that basically checks all art forms, film, movies, etc., if you can present that to children or to younger people. And they said no, games cannot use swastika or anti-constitutional symbols because they will misuse them. So, and in 2018 something happened, because a gaming studio and the Game Association thought to change that rule. And they said, like, look at this game. Games can actually, in an interesting way, in an artistic way, reflect on the Nazi Reich and the Third Reich. And actually this changed in 2018. Now you can actually use swastika in games. And that came with this game. This is Through the Darkest of Times. It is by Bean Bucket Studio, Bean Bucket Games. And it was published in 2020. And they actually still had the swastika in the game. You could disable them in the menu. So you could take them out. If you felt offended by it, you could just like deactivate them. And I think they also did that, but I never asked Jörg, because they felt like maybe the change of the law, of the reading of the law, will not happen, so we want to be sure that we can take them out if we cannot present swastika. So these games, this game, Through the Darkest of Times, is the first German game that actually uses swastika in games for under the R paragraph, the sexual adequacy paragraph. And a couple followed, actually. I love that they changed this reading of the law. So Through the Darkest of Times, I'll quickly present to you what it's about. So the first layer of the game is a strategy game, where you organize a resistance cell in Berlin. You have to organize many people who are from various political backgrounds. You have conservatives, you have Catholics, you have liberals, you have communists, you have anarchists, and you need to try to make them work as a group. So the basis for the strategy game is basically very democratic, I think, because it's basically about making people agree on the lowest thing that they have to agree on, basically that fascism is bad. I wish we would do that today. The common denominator, I think it's found. And the second layer of the game is a historic layer, where you play a visual novel style, where you follow the grand and small strokes of history, like the Reichstagsbrand, so the burning of the Reichstag, and the book burning in Berlin, which was a major thing, but also a son in a family ratting out his parents, like telling the Nazis about his parents because they listened to radio of the enemy. You know, so it's the grand strokes and it's also the small things that to reflect on what it does to the people. And paintball games reached they were huge in the media. They also reached the New York Times. I'm not sure if they were basically, there were journalists speaking about this in Italy, but in America and in several other countries, they actually had very interesting and good press about this. The second theme I want to present to you is Tribunal 45, Tribunal 45, working on justice, which just came out this year, which takes also an interesting approach, because you play Aline Schadowfrüh, I hope I spoke that right, and she's a real life figure. So she was one of the helping prosecutors in the Nuremberg trials, 1945. The Nazis were basically prosecuted in front of court, and you see these prosecutions through her eyes and through her help. So you do several things. You walk the halls of the courtyard in Nuremberg. You talk to the relevant people that you do. You have this tiny onlooking on the map. You meet people, you talk to them, and you also have to discuss things with the people that you meet. So you will be asked, like, how do you, like, there are several prosecutors or lawmakers from America, from France, from different countries, from maybe Russia, I'm not quite sure about that. And these have different laws and different approaches to law. And so the game asks you several questions about which would you think is correct, like how would you proceed, like which version of the law would you take? And in the end, it basically evaluates your choice and shows you 48% took a different route and said the other thing, basically, like are witnesses allowed to, do they have to talk in English in front of the court? Or can they speak in their own mother tongue, for example, like, which is kind of important, because we see here how important it is to understand the language and to be able to express yourself in this language. So you basically get a feeling for the differences in rulings and maybe how the court, how the rulings and the prosecution, and how difficult it also was to establish those. And this, like, Tribunal 45 it's obviously a game that is not we talked about this today a bit, as I understand it, about like how entertaining is it actually, or how much of a serious game, of an educational game is it actually, and Tribunal 45 is obviously more on the fact presenting and educative side, and you will basically not play it for fun, but you will play it in an exhibition about the Nuremberg trials, and that's what it was designed for, actually, for an exhibition about the Nuremberg trials. And I think in this context, it's an excellent solution to actually have like young people approach the Nuremberg trial and be able to discover them for themselves, because in that context, this feels fresh and interesting and not like, oh my god, this is not a game, you know, this is... So I think it's a fresh and interesting start to talk about the Nuremberg trials. Thirdly, I want to talk about The Darkest Files, which is a game I worked on as like an initial narrative director. It's also from Paintbucket Games, so the name is intentionally building on through the darkest of times. And this is a game about Fritz Bauer. Fritz Bauer was also a prosecutor, a state prosecutor, who led up to the Nuremberg trials. So he was basically investigating and prosecuting crimes that had been done by people under the Third Reich that hadn't been prosecuted because SS people had committed the crimes, or because they were thought like, it was a communist who died, never mind, or it was a disabled person who died, never mind, we don't need to prosecute that. And the game basically investigates and prosecutes these crimes that were never punished. And I love the quotation by Fritz Bauer. Fritz Bauer is the person in Germany who actually sculpted and created the German memory culture that we have today, because he felt like there are crimes against humanity that are so bad that you cannot say, oh, I only followed orders. You have to disobey these orders to basically be a decent human being and not be prosecuted. So the quotation by Fritz Bauer, nothing belongs to the past, everything is still present and can become the future again, is obviously an anti-fascist statement. It was 1956, an anti-fascist statement, and it still is very important today, I think. And it is as anti-fascist as the German constitution. So we're talking not about left-wing anti-fascism here, we're just talking about basic human decency. But The Darkest Files took a different approach to designing a game than Tribunal 45, Tribunal 45, because this is a non-authentic approach. So they did not intentionally they didn't use figures that were historical figures, but they took, like the lady on the right is basically the person that you're playing, so she's the avatar, she's the character that you're playing, and Esther Katz never existed, so she's fictitious, while Fritz Bauer on the left is the only historical figure in the game. He's the prosecutor that basically built this unit of prosecutors who prosecuted the crimes. So, what is different? So, we added a fictitious figure to the game because she's female, and a woman in this position would have been highly unlikely in 1956 in Germany. It makes it easy to evoke basically the discriminatory mentality of the time, because the sexism that was built into the system of Germany, you can have that in the game, because to other people this a female prosecutor can also be weird. It makes that also, on the other hand, it makes identification possible for modern players, because maybe a woman is more approachable. And otherwise, we would have had an all-male cast, so all-male figures in the game, and we did not want that because all of the prosecutors in Germany basically were male at that time. So we wanted a female character, and so we made it the protagonist. And you you try to reconstruct the events of that time. So you basically you delve into a first-person perspective. You can actually walk the halls of the situation where the crime happened. You can ask witnesses after the fact. So what we did in the game and what the team did in the game, because I only worked at it at the beginning, is basically we tried to be true to the spirit of the era and not be as authentic as possible. We also changed the court system, because in the end, when you investigated the crime, you needed to bring it to court and to actually defend it and make so that the perpetrators would be put in jail. And like the team investigated if we could use the German court system and put it in the game, because the game is very much about making German bureaucracy playable in a way. And they talked to a lawyer who's a friend also, and he said, nope, it is so boring, please don't do it. Don't use the German court system. It will bore people's minds out. And so the team basically went and took the American justice system, because you can actually have a dialogue at court, and you can actually say something as a prosecutor in court, because otherwise you wouldn't have like much dialogue in there. To be able to make it playable, because a game is not a historic lesson, and you want to participate and to have interactive content in a game. And also to make the topic accessible to a younger audience, and so on. That was the approach of this game. I'll look at the screen. Okay. I'll jump over this a bit quickly. So the first game I want to talk about is not published yet, but I think it's an important game to come, which it is called Als Gott schlief. The game would be called, I think the title would be When God Slept. And this is a game by a small Berlin team that also has a lot of Jews in their midst. So the lead, I think, designer is a Jew also, and he wanted to make a game about Holocaust. And the interesting approach, like up till now, we never played a perpetrator, we never played a Nazi, we never played an oppressor. And this game that is not published yet by Campfire Tales, they have two protagonists in the story, and one is a victim and the other one is basically an oppressor, so a Nazi. And I'm very interested to see this game, and I have all the trust in the world that they will manage to make it playable in an interesting way, because up till now we had a barrier in Germany where people say, okay, you can play the Holocaust, but not like the evildoers, not the Nazis. You can play the victims, but not the Nazis. And this game it's a small and tiny game, but it will change on this, and I'm very interested to see how it goes. So this is the tagline. You basically play, you experience a world at the brink. It will be very narrative driven, of course. And that brings me basically to my finale for today. So games as cultural artifacts, how do they work and how do they talk about topics like these? So I think in the first round we have to start thinking of our players as users. We have to think of them as citizens and cultural beings. And this is cemented by Miguel Sicar. Hope it is readable. This is basically the guy who wrote The Ethics of Computer Games, and that is a text that is, I don't know, 15 years old or 20. And he says that a player experiences a game in a ludic hermeneutic circle, a process of procedural moral interpretation of the game experience. This process is also a dialogue between the player as a moral being and the game. In this dialogue, the player has not only to interpret the game, but also to provide ethical behaviors of her own to the experience. An ethical game, thus, is that which acknowledges, respects, and encourages the ethical being of computer game players. And I wholeheartedly agree with Miguel Sicar on this, though it is like nearly 20 years out. So this is the ludic hermeneutical circle. The ethical reflection of the game world, the ethical reflection of the medium, and the ethical reflection of reality that basically influence each other. And why is memory culture, digital interactive memory culture, important for games, and why are games thus important for democracy? Because I think the games industry, because games are a mass medium, we have a responsibility towards the people. And I think that is one that we should cross-fund serious topics and serious games. So if we have one like very successful game that like pays very well, cashes very well, we need to cross-fund serious topics as well. We have, as designers, we have a responsibility to make games that actually train democratic skills and reflect on things democratically. And we have a responsibility of our states also to fund culturally important games, because serious games have it very hard on the market. Basically, they never sell well, especially when you put the tagline "serious games" on them. And I would love to see more culturally investment by the state of Germany, and maybe it's already into culturally important games. So, why do games train democratic skills? I think that because like decisions are part of our democracy, so you need to train for decision skills, and games do that very well actually, to train for making a decision in a complex situation. You can actually introduce multi-perspectivity, because that is one thing that games do very well. Different media do different things very well. Like a book reflects on the inner feeling of a person very well, and a game can offer you multi-perspectivity. You train for empathy because you change the perspective of yourself into a character, for example. And you can educate with games. So, and if you have a multiplayer game, for example, you train for collective actions. So you train for forming alliances and for understanding ourselves as part of a whole. So. And finally, I will offer you the 5 keys to designing a serious game. And that is not my finding here, that is vintage digital. You can find it on, I think I have the link in the sources. He says that the 5 keys to designing a serious game are actually multi-perspectivity, the authenticity, the constructivism of ideas, where you can basically train yourself to understand what's happening, the inclusiveness of a game, and the contextualization of what you play. And with this, I am done, and I thank you for your attention and listening to the day. I think we can put on some light now.
Yes, thank you.
That's the thing on dance.
Even. I realize it's
So thank you.
okay, so please, Claudia and Nico, I leave you the first questions and reflections about this marvelous presentation. I have some ideas, some thoughts.
I told you, if you let professors speak, they will speak forever. Please, Claudia.
Yeah.
I think we have 2 microphones.
Wait a minute. That is that.
What do you, would you like to start?
I thought you were asking like...
Or Claudia, would you start?
Yes.
Claudia, start.
We have to shoot it.
It's fantastic, your presentation. And you talk about a new kind of video games, and of video games that speak about Nazi era, but not being banned, because the social adequacy clause was extended to turn video games as art. If this video games uses the fanatics' perspective to show moral decay and the order of the regime, it can be protected as art. If the gameplay makes you feel aware of your crimes and show the destructive consequences of your choices, it meets the social adequacy criteria. But also there are some commercial barriers that can act in this case, because we speak about, for example, the case of horses. Horses, video game banned by Steam and other platforms.
The Italian case in these days that you are talking about.
It has been banned from Steam.
Yes, because even if legal, major platforms, Steam, PlayStation, Xbox, often refuse to host games that allow players to participate in real-world genocides to avoid public backlash and ethical controversy. Okay. So I want to speak of what can we define cultural barrier or commercial barrier, and then to the social democracy close. The issue of the memory of Nazism and of the laws that now prevent symbols from being displayed or graphics from glorifying is very interesting. But this is connected to the so-called politics of memory of the never again. A form of memory that allows identification only with the victim or the oppressor or the liberator. And we have the necessity to get out of these three kinds of heroes, victims, oppressors, and liberators. From a historical point of view, an effective narrative should include the implicated subject. The implicated subject in the crimes and thinking. With laws that prohibit the display of symbols and ban particular themes of issue, what kind of risks will they solve? It's not just a question of freedom of expression, I think, as the case of horses, or freedom of thought, or raising problems, or provoking to reflect. We risk to reproduce a politics of memory created by Europe and West, a sort of cultural memory that is a politics of identity, and that is a divisive politics. It's in certain cases a strong human rights education from a West perspective. This is the main risk I see. A politics of memory that draws a boundary between those who possess a cultural rights, a democratic culture, and a genuine interest in peace, and the other. The West claims this right because it defeated Hitler, it defeated Stalin and the Soviet Union. Therefore, it refuses to acknowledge the shared responsibility it has had and continues to have in fueling totalitarianism, racism, populism, and a culture of war. A politics of memory that tells the history of humanity from 1945 onward as the defeat of totalitarianism by the culture of universal human rights is essentially represented by Western countries, and this same politics of memory periodizes the history of humanity around the crime par excellence of the Holocaust, and has generated an international competition around crimes against humanity. Other peoples, other subjects have claimed to be victims of crimes just as enormous, such as, for example, the transatlantic slave trade. In the same way, the definition of genocide as a crime is the result, in the immediate post-war period, of negotiations among states in order to avoid being subjected to critical lessons of history. Even today, we live in the middle of a dispute over what should be defined as a crime, what should be defined as genocide, who the victims of history are, and how to interpret the culture of universal right in a world in which democracies are increasingly fragile. Therefore, we must pay close attention to how memory is constructed and how human rights education is constructed, I think. From my point of view, and the only two criteria should be the link to the knowledge of the past, the knowledge of the context of the Nazi era and its complexity. Because the culture of war, fostered by 19th century nationalism and imperialism, constructed precisely these identities that carry sentences, heroes, values, rights, and civilizations, and were therefore close to the dialogue with others. Fathom of this culture becomes totalitarianism in a specific context, in Europe, in Germany, in Italy, in the Soviet Union. And this specific context I want to understand it. It's also a matter of human rights education. It's a matter of historical knowledge and historical education. And I think, because I can study it. So, to finish, in a conflict between friends or spouses, in a separation, memory selects the past in order to orient itself, emphasizing the functional aspects. Trump and Putin do the same, however, using the same politics of memory to present themselves as the authentic heirs of the right side of history. This fuels a culture of war, and the artificial intelligence can amplify stereotypes, and algorithms introduce forms of censorship, but we don't know how. The risk is that we remain enclosed within narratives deliberately built to make us feel superior, to say never again, while we prepare the conditions for new wars and witness new genocides without being able to define them as such. Your attempt is a serious education in democratic citizenship, but with historical themes, I think we need to focus on education in historical thought. Only in this way can ethical education detach itself from the politics of memory and from political and commercial uses of the past. But these are the risks, I think, not your agenda.
It's well for take a look at that.
Okay, lot of stuff to unpack. First of all, thanks for all the input. Oh my God, there's so many things. First of all, I think it was mentioned before that we learn about history, so things don't repeat themselves. I don't know, maybe it's just me being very cynical, but over the years I've kind of changed my attitude towards the one thing we learn from history is that we don't learn shit from history because everything constantly repeats itself. And we go in circles and we always find ourselves in the same shitty situations and we keep killing each other for the same stupid reasons. We just get a bit more sophisticated and technologically advanced about it. Wow, this is now we're blowing each other up with drones. Thank God for AI. And back then it was muskets. Okay, cool. I do think that when it comes to there was a lot of discussions about education through video games, and I do think there is a high potential, but I do think it's also not going to happen in the way that people think it's going to happen, if that makes sense. First of all, I do think the potential that games have per se, a game should be fun. Everyone can define fun in a different way. Fun doesn't necessarily mean it's funny. It doesn't mean it's colorful. It can be dark, but fun in a way that it gives me something. It triggers some emotions and it makes me think.
I usually use the word interesting.
Interesting. Very, very interesting approach. So that's the thing. And I could list a ton of games that probably, like all of you who've ever played games, know about. The usual suspects. Let's start with, to have Jörg Friedrich involved again, one of the classics, PS3, Spec Ops: The Line. Wasn't a big sell, but people still talk about it because in a very surprising way and in a very unexpected way showed people like the ugliness of war. Everyone who's played the game knows about that one specific scene. All I say is white phosphorus. If that sparks your interest in actually learning more about what white phosphorus is and what it does to the human body, you know, that is already an educational thing. But what I don't need at that moment is an in-game tutorial and a Wikipedia entry that tells me on what white phosphorus is and how it reacts with the human body, and that's probably gonna end really, really badly. But in this specific moment, it kind of like, it puts it on the map. It shows me in the blink of an eye what this stuff does and how cruel war can be, and it doesn't try to make it heroic. Take this war of mine, classic. You don't need like a specific faction. It doesn't need to be the Nazis versus the Russians. It doesn't need to be Al-Qaeda against whatever. It's a nameless conflict, but at the end of the day, the important thing about the game is the people that always suffer for the decisions that the people up there in their safe rooms make is like the civilians, the kids. Once 11-bit back then actually brought out the DLC, the little ones. Like they got messages from people who were parents who said like, we love what you guys are doing. This game is amazing. This is exactly triggering the right pain points in a good way. But we can't play it, especially now that we're parents ourselves. These are the kinds of games that actually make you think, that make you invested, that make you actually, you know, not everyone, because you'll never convert everyone. That's never gonna happen. But if you actually pique their interests in these kinds of ways, be it a good twist in a game, be it, I don't know, like, at least like cultural, historical authenticity, then if you get people to invest it, to actually check out for themselves what's behind it, to dive deeper into history and, you know, learn more about the facts. I think this is how you get people invested to learn, not by bombarding them with historical info, because then it becomes school just in a virtual room. But if I pick up a game and I have fun and I don't want to stop playing, because what I am playing is getting me interested in something, I think in these cases you have the highest chances of someone actually picking up on it. Otherwise it's just a different form of class. Considering like the games that you've presented, like Tribunal 45, these are the kinds of games that I like to see in the classroom. You don't have to play them for 90 hours. This is like you don't have to make them for class. Because why? This is something that everyone can, well, I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but that everyone can get behind. And on the other hand, like even if it's a game, if it's a textbook, if you force it on people, if you're not convincing, if people don't dig it, they won't give a shit about it. I'm sorry about the language, but they will not care. Whether it's a game, whether it's a book, whether it's a movie, if it's not interesting, if it doesn't catch your eye, then it will not get you invested. So man, I don't want to grab the microphone for all the other stuff. One thing one final thing that I wanted to mention, because I think it's at least a nice anecdote. Because around the time when you guys actually pushed through with the change of this article of swastika actually being allowed in, not you per se, but around the time, and Paint Pocket Games, like Through the Darkest of Times was the first German game that was officially allowed to have swastika in the game. And there was also around the time where, I mean, we had this discussion within the games industry, but there's a lot of discussions within the games industry, and it's a bubble. But I think like one of the most common arguments was, why are, like, if something is considered art, then you're allowed to kind of use swastika. And I think all of us know at least like 2 to 3 really shitty, bad movies who have no artsy aspects. What's it, like Zombies in the Snow? What was it? I don't know. It's just like, but suddenly like swastika are allowed. Don't tell me this is art, but this game is not. So this was a huge milestone, specifically for Germany, obviously. It's not like we did not have games that had swastika in them, like even Black Ops 1 and whatnot. This is like people just bought the PEGI version from Austria or any import version. But the one that I'm getting at, and it also plays into what you said with, for example, commercial bands. There was a game, a little game called Wolfenstein, especially the new parts. New Colossus, bad, well, okay, forget about Nazi zombies, but the new Colossus, to everyone who has not played it, do it. This game contains one of the best written villains ever. Like, it makes your skin crawl. A person you love to hate just because it's written so well. So, but then there was like the final installment, and that also came out around the time when Through the Darkest of Times was published, and that was called Youngbloods. That was this really bad multiplayer installment. But that was the first one. They were officially allowed to sell with swastika in the game in Germany, but most of the actual stores they denied like the swastika versions. For me personally, and this is what I'm gonna pass on to you, I realized in that moment that swastika or not, everyone knows what the game is about, and it's a lot of fun to punch Nazis in the face. Everyone knows what the game is about, what regime is represented. In hindsight, I almost felt like having this, the not swastika, the imaginary symbol, like having even more impact, because it kind of made it timeless. So it doesn't have to be the Nazis that we know from World War II. And if we look across the big pond, we can see in real time what happened in the 30s. And we're still numb to it. So please, yeah, it's just like, we all learn from history, but you know, right now it doesn't really change anything. You have people jumping out of unmarked vans, picking people off the streets. Now they call it ICE, back then we called it DSS. We invented that shit. I'm sorry.
We actually took it from the Americans first.
We took it from the Americans? Oh, so it's, okay, we go full circle then.
So the mentality, the thinking came from the US actually. So the Nazis took inspiration from the US, and we basically professionalized it.
We professionalized it, okay. But see, this is what I mean. This is like you can see history unfold like in real time. You just have to open your eyes and be willing to actually watch the news from time to time and think about it and not ignore it. So having a game that suddenly does exactly the same thing, that won't change anything. You know, you just have to be willing to get educated. That's my final count for now.
I'm going to latch on to that because in what happens in the US at the moment is showing us the importance of education and of knowledge being spread, because those people don't know about Nazi Germany, they don't know about what happened, they don't know about the small steps they are not educated as well. I think it's safe to say that. And if we need one thing in all of our constitutions is about a qualitative level of education for the people. So that is something that we should all know. But I wanted to address something you said about we're talking a lot about Jörg Friedrich here. He's, like I said, the creative director of the games. He also did Spec Ops: The Lines. He was a lead game designer, I think, in that. So it's kind of his thing to build games. So he's also the mental father of the Darkest Files and Slytherin Garrison. So he's the driver of everything, of these changes, so to speak. And what did I want to say? I think that, so the difference between Tribunal 45, I tried to make that clear, and the Darkest Files, so they're both about justice systems, they're both about prosecution of crimes, and one takes the authentic approach and the other takes a more entertainment approach. And I think both are very justified. One is for use in an exhibition to basically make that exhibition interactive and make use the, like I said, in the 5 keys to serious games, have a constructivist approach to achieving that education, to achieving that information for yourself, because that makes it, ironically, more interesting to play an exhibition than to just watch it or read about it. So this is, I think, better than just having a plain confrontational lecture about the Tribunal in 45. And the Darkest Files takes the edutainment approach, because here we felt like the authentic approach is not the right one, because we want people to have fun playing the game. We want to make an interesting gameplay. And Tribunal 45 doesn't need that, because it is presented in an exhibition. So you have to see, I think there are different solutions for different audiences and different ways of presenting the topics that we're talking about. And all of them are very justified and interesting across to each other. And I wanted to briefly touch on something you said, because I want to add to the criticism of big tech and big companies that has been present in many of the talks of this conference, because in letting Steam censor the kind of games that we get to see, we leave the decision of what we're allowed to play to the Americans, or to American tech companies. And I think that is wrong. They say you cannot, they also censor games that are very sex positive, by the way, and I think that is wrong too, because it is not up to a company to decide what I can see and what I can play. And since these platforms are gatekeepers for games, for approaching games, heavy gatekeepers, I think they should be regulated more, and they should also be forced, or they should have the duty to publish games, because that is also one form of freedom of expression and of, I think, a people like Germany or Italy should decide on what is okay to be published in our national borders and not an American company.
I have a lot of thoughts about a lot of things after these reflections. I will try to be nice. We are not chaotic, because there are a lot of these things that are not nice. Because there are a lot of parts of these days that now are in a very critical point. Anyway, I will try to simplify. Before, in the day, Professor Brusa proposed to change the term serious games with humanistic games. And, you know, to not kill the interesting part, because usually serious means for us that it's boring. And this is a very important point for us because also in my courses I try to teach a humanistic way of game design. And I think it's very important to try to transfer the complexity, that we need to approach game with history and to develop game with history. And yesterday, Professor Guzzo also told us that one of the criticalities in the schools is time. Each teacher going have a lot of hours to teach the knowledge that he has to transfer to the guys. And so, I think that we have games. We have this very powerful tool that Nico told us that we have to develop in an interesting, very interesting way to have something of educational inside of them. And I think that after all these days that probably we need more time in schools. I don't know if this is right, but not more time to do the things that we are doing right now, but to imagine new things to do, with not only with the professors, with the teachers that right now we have, because we need more teachers, but this multidisciplinarity must enter in the schools. So game designer probably must be, you know, main job of the game designer at schools to make interesting things and to deconstruct, to build new games, and to deconstruct the games that we are playing right now, to deconstruct it and to try not only to teach, but only to give this complex approach to tech.